Hello, and welcome to episode 55 of A Week in Watches, a weekly look back at news, stories, releases, and more from the wild world of watches. I'm your host, Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn & Wound. Thanks for joining me. If variety is the spice of life, this week is going to be spicy. We've got watches from all of the spectrum with wild movements, dials, functions, and more. But before we get into it, please do like and subscribe. It helps us out. Also, apparently, we are adding a wrist check to A Week in Watches now. So this week I am wearing the Omega Speedmaster 3520 triple calendar chronograph. We're actually shooting this on my birthday, and I figure if you have a triple calendar chronograph, you should wear it on your birthday as you have the whole thing spelled out there. Be sure to check out this week's sponsor, the Wind Up Watch Shop, Worn & Wound's retail arm featuring watches, straps, EDC, and more. There are dozens of new products added weekly from brands you love, as well as limited and special editions you can only find there, such as the new Vero X Adapt Workhorse, a summery vision with a bright aqua Cerakoted case and a white, pink, and yellow highlights. It's a seriously fun take on a tool watch. Check that out and more at windupwatchshop.com. Singer Reimagined thinks it's the summer of '69. I'll clarify that joke momentarily, but first, some context. Singer Reimagined launched in 2017 as a haute horology sibling to the Porsche modding company with the same name. Obviously, the two brands are related, but rather than the car guys making watches, Marco Barocchino, former head of design of Panerai, runs the show. And what he has done is create a series of chronographs inspired by Porsches and the work of the car company, as well as classic 70s racing chronographs. But rather than create a typically styled vintage-inspired chronograph with 2 or 3 sub-registers, they went the avant-garde route and got rid of them entirely, instead focusing on completely novel chronograph layouts. They did this by using the Agengraph caliber by Agenor, which is an incredible and very high-end movement that allows for centrally mounted chronograph hands and peripheral time telling. Or not, depending on the design. You see, it's a caliber that allows for immense amounts of customization thanks to a modular ring-shaped architecture. I got the opportunity a couple of years ago to try one of these watches out for a few weeks, and it was rad. The hands of the center of the dial aren't telling the time, they are the chronograph, counting up to an impressive 60 hours. The time was then read on what looked like an internal bezel, but was actually 2 rings, one for the hour, other for the minutes. Pretty wild stuff. But why am I here making Bryan Adams references? Well, Singer Reimagined has launched a new series of watches called the 1969 collection, a reference to a tremendous year in history, which included the moon landing, Woodstock, and more importantly to watch fans, the launch of the first automatic chronographs, which is probably why Bryan Adams was inspired to write that song, right? Anyway, for the 1969 collection, Singer has announced 2 watches which, at a glance, seem quite similar to existing models, but have 2 big changes. First, they are now 40 millimeters in diameter. The previous models, such as the one I tried, were 43 millimeters in diameter, which was quite large, though manageable, as the lug-to-lug was 48 millimeters. With that said, 40 millimeters will be pretty perfect for a case like this. The other change is really an addition. For the first time, Singer has added a bracelet into the mix. Featuring an H-link design with faceted geometry, it definitely plays off the bravado racing chronographs from the era. As for the 2 watches, one is called the 1969 chronograph and the other the 1969 timer. Both feature black and gilt colorways with orange hands for a John Player vibe, and both feature the Agengraph movement, but they do their things in very different ways. The 1969 chronograph is like the watch I looked at. It features central second, minute, hour hands for the 60-hour chronograph with time told via discs and a window at 6. The 1969 timer is a 3-hand watch with a trick up its sleeve. The hour and minute hand tell the time, plain and simple. The seconds hand, however, can function as a 60-second timer. Pressing the pusher at 2 will instantly send the second hand back to 0, like a flyback chronograph. If you hold the pusher down, the hand will stay until you let go, allowing you to start timing the moment you need to. At other times, it's just a second hand. Of course, with haute movements come haute prices. The 1969 chronograph comes in at 51,000 Swiss francs and the 1969 timer at 29,900 Swiss francs. Expensive, clearly, but it's an essential accessory to your Singer Reimagined Porsche, right? Elka speaks in tongues. Elka is a relatively new revival brand helmed by industry veteran Hakim El-Kadiri, who worked with many leading Swiss brands, including Hamilton and Rado. Nicknamed Elka since childhood, which is an abbreviation from El-Kadiri, he always wanted that to be the name of his own brand. As luck would have it, there was a defunct Dutch brand from the 60s with the same name. So the new Elka is both a signature brand and one inspired by history. Currently, there are a couple of models that share the same 40.8mm case, the Elka X and Elka D. The Elka X being based on aviation instrument created by Hoyer for the original Elka, and the Elka D, which has a classic dress style. Both versions feature the La Panerai G100 automatic movement. As for the news, Elka has teamed up with well-known Amsterdam-based retailer Ace Jewelers for a linguistic collaboration meant to celebrate the diversity of the watch collecting community, aptly called the Diversity Series. A quartet of watches, each limited to 25 pieces. They feature deep gradient blue dials with sunray finishing and numerals, but each features numerals in a different language. Represented are Eastern Arabic Hindi, Chinese, Hebrew, and classical Western Arabic numerals. There's also a box set with all of them limited to 7 units. Very attractive watches with a slight twist. The Elka X Ace Jewelers Diversity Series is available now from Ace Jewelers or Elka Watches and costs $1,950 per watch. Schwarz Etienne gets twisted. This next watch is nothing if not crazy. Luxury watch and movement company Schwarz Etienne teamed up with renowned watch designer Eric Giroud to create one of the wildest dials I've ever seen. Called the Geometry, the dial features 4 quadrants, each broken into a series of arcs featuring an array of textures, none of which quite line up with the next quadrant, creating a design that is dynamic, chaotic, and perhaps infuriating if you're a stickler for symmetry. The design itself is madness, but not just in terms of design, but also craft. See, the dial is solid gold, and all of the patterns are achieved through handmade guilloche. While guilloche dials often feature multiple patterns, they usually are in larger regions or circular areas, and they tend to be limited to a few per patterns per dial, maybe 1 or 2. On the Geometry, you have these crazy arcs and wedges with fluted lines of varying widths and direction, azure, which is sort of a cross-hatched fanning texture, and clou de Paris, which are those little pyramidal squares. Additionally, there is a sandblasted and printed minute track, which contrasts for legibility, and a fairly, almost oddly straightforward sub-second style. It's altogether nuts. The case is thankfully very straightforward and sober, coming in at 39mm and made of stainless steel. Anything else would have been a bit too much to handle. Powering the Geometry is the Schwarz Etienne ASE 200.02 micro rotor automatic, which features 33 joules, a frequency of 21,600 beats per hour, 86-hour power reserve, and is beautifully decorated with blasting, black polishing, bevels, etc. There are 2 versions of the Geometry, one in rhodium for a dark silver hue, and the other in salmon with contrasting black regions, both incredibly striking. I actually got to see them in Geneva this year, and they really blew my mind, so to speak. The dial feels like it's playing some sort of trick on your eye, like it's in motion somehow. I was quite mesmerized by it. The Schwarz Etienne Geometry is limited to 100 pieces per color and costs 23,400 euros. Alpina squares up to their 140th anniversary. Alpina is one of those brands that's easy to forget is quite old. Founded in 1883, they are turning 140 this year. To celebrate the occasion, they unearthed and restored vintage movements from their own manufacturer from 85 years ago. Called the Caliber 490, it's a rectangular movement that was made by Union Horlogerie, which was owned by Alpina, making it a rare early in-house in-group caliber. A sports watch brand at heart, Alpina was at the forefront at the time of pursuing technology that would make their watches last longer and take more of a beating. The Caliber 490 exhibits this with a patented crown system designed to prevent dust from getting into the watches. As this movement is 85 years old, there are not many of them, but Alpina was able to find and restore a handful of movements for use in 2 gorgeous celebratory watches. Called the Alpina Heritage Carrier Mechanical 140 years, both are rectangular watches as per the movement, with silver cases. Already quite rare and exceptional, this really makes these special pieces. The 2-part case measures 29.5mm wide by 35.7 long with a height of 9.7, making them appropriately sized for the movement and as though they were made actually 85 years ago. As said, there are 2 versions. One that is available in the US and internationally, which features a matte finished black dial with beige numerals, indices, and hands mounted to a light brown ostrich strap. It looks absolutely amazing. The other version is the same premise, but with a silver dial and black numerals. This one is available everywhere but the US. Shucks. But that might not matter anyway. As you see, they're making very, very few of these. As per the movements, only 28, so 14 of each, and they cost $5,395, which isn't cheap, but seems fitting, especially with the silver case. So I think these are going to sell out mighty fast. In fact, they're probably gone already. Sorry. I sincerely hope they turn this watch into something readily available in steel using a modern movement. The styling is great, mixing the inherently Art Deco aesthetics of a 30s rectangular case with something a bit more rugged, even military in nature. It just looks great. I don't know, what do you think? And that's it for episode 55 of A Week in Watches. Please give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to head to windupwatchshop.com to find yourself a new watch, strap, or accessory. And of course, visit wornandwound.com daily for more watch news and reviews. We'll see you next time.